Hello, and welcome to the 2020 LULAC Muscatine Political Forum. My name is Daniel Salazar, and I will be your host this evening. LULAC stands for League of United Latin American Citizens and is one of the oldest civil rights organizations in the country. The mission of LULAC is to advance the economic condition, educational attainment, political influence, housing, health, and civil rights of the Hispanic population of the United States. Tonight we are joined by a Democratic candidate, Ed Askew. Ed Askew studied at the University of Arkansas and earned his Ph.D. in chemistry. He is endorsed by the Great River Area Labor Federation and International Union of Operating Engineers 150. According to the Discover Muscatine, three most important issues facing Muscatine County over the next term for Askew are COVID-19, mental health, and economic stability. Before we get started, we would like to thank the Muscatine Community College and the students behind the scenes who are using this as a learning opportunity. I want to acknowledge MCC and the MPW Channel 9 and the MCC TV production class. They are the students helping making this happen for all of you at home. As a reminder, LULAC is a nonpartisan organization, and for the record, Scott Sauer, the Republican candidate, did not respond to our invitation. On that note, let's get started. Ed, if I may, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the chance to talk to LULAC and to all of the people tuning in.
Well, it's a pleasure. Now, why don't we start off talking just a little bit about yourself? As I understand it, you are the president and owner of Askew Scientific Consulting. How did you get to that point?
Well, I was running a laboratory down in New Mexico that did radioactive safety and exposure for buried radioactive waste. I came back to Iowa because, again, there were some problems down there. I exposed the problems, and I was told, well, thank you very much, now find some other place. So I came back, I started teaching up in Clinton at the local college up there, not the community college, but Ashford University. And I had some friends in the engineering field at Veenstra and Kim and at Stanley Engineering and such. And they said, Ed, start a company and deal with chemistry, environmental chemistry. So Askew Scientific was born. And I proceeded to build a laboratory out on my property. I do specialized environmental work for companies. And then I started also working in the area of cannabis safety. So setting up and developing analytical and quality control procedures at cannabis facilities in the states where it's legal. Here in Iowa, it would be for hemp, as hemp production goes in Illinois, hemp extraction and the use of cannabidiol in products. And so I go around the United States in different areas in the states where it's legal, and help companies out or laboratories out. I've also done pro bono work for small growers in Washington State as they basically had problems with the state enforcement and bad analytical analysis. And that's going to be key to a presentation I'm doing in about 3 weeks online for Horizons Instruments. And it'll be specifically addressing quality control and quality analysis.
You mentioned that you focus on environmental chemistry.
Yes.
Why is that? Why not something else?
Well, I started out working in chemistry. Once I got out and then finished my postdoc, I started working in the pesticide area. I worked for a company called Mobe, which was a joint venture between Monsanto and Bayer, or Bayer, as the Germans told me. And now, as you know, the Monsanto has been purchased by Bayer. So I started off in the pesticide area doing an evaluation of different types of pesticide formulations to meet EPA requirements. I got very interested in environmental chemistry, both it being done correctly and helping find out the stuff or the people or the instruments or the procedures that were being done incorrectly. So I worked for a while for the city of Muscatine running the wastewater treatment plant laboratory. Then I went up and did some work for 5 years for the city of Davenport, running the environmental chemistry lab up there for the wastewater plant and doing environmental enforcement under industrial pretreatment. So that's how I got into environmental chemistry. It was just a application of chemistry to protect the environment.
And then you also talked about hemp. What work have you done in Iowa, or what work are you trying to do?
Well, right now in Iowa, you can only grow hemp. You cannot do anything with it after you grow it. You have to send it outside of the state. It's illegal to process hemp according to the state of Iowa in the state of Iowa. You can cut it and ship it. You cannot sell any cannabidiol products at this time, even though it's been approved by a House bill signed by the governor in July. Unfortunately, the licenses to sell cannabidiol products have not been approved yet by the licensing board.
Well, thank you, and let's move on here to the next question here. So you talk a lot about your background, and I'll tell you, you do have quite a bit to put on your resume. So why run for Muscatine County Board of Supervisors? Why now, and what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, all right, kind of a background story. A little over 3 years ago, I was approached by some farmers in an organization to stop the use of slag on gravel roads. Now, at that time, and right now, my mother-in-law still drives on gravel roads, but at that time, my father-in-law was still alive, and he and my mother-in-law drove on gravel roads that had slag on it, and it causes flat tires. My mother-in-law has had now 5 flat tires due to slag over the few years because it's on her road. Well, I worked with those farmers, and they went out and they got over 700 signatures to stop the use of slag. They took those signatures, and I sat in the supervisor's office where they were having the supervisor's meeting. They presented the signatures, all of those petitions, to Scott Sauer. And Scott just off to the side. He ignored them.
Really?
Then, when we came back, when Nathan Mather was chair the next year and brought even more information about how unsafe slag was, he called the kids that would get poisoned by it rock eaters. Those are autistic children. Those are ones that need extra protection, or children 2 years of age that do pica behavior, that put things in their mouth at 2. All right, so to him, they weren't worth anything. So that irritated me so much, I said, okay, we need to replace Scott. I'm in District 3. I need to replace Scott Sauer. Let's go find a candidate. I went all around, tried to find a candidate. People said, Ed, you're doing such a great job. Why don't you run? So that's how I got into it.
And for the people at home, could you tell us a bit more of what slag is and what the negative effects of it?
Okay, slag is a waste product. Up until the early, 2011, 2012, it was considered solid waste. Then the state of Iowa took away the solid waste, application on that, saying you can use it for anything. So the slag I'm talking about is electronic arc furnace slag, and it specifically comes from SSAB. Which is a steel plant here in Muscatine. It's a waste product. They now have a way to sell it, give it to the county, sell it to the county, and they put the waste product on the road. Unfortunately, this waste product has a lot of leftover steel in it. The steel that does not get recovered when they crush the slag, which is a waste product that floats on top of the molten steel. So they're recycling steel, they melt it, they add some material to it to take the impurities out. It floats on top of the molten steel. They take that off, they let it cool, they crush it. That's electronic arc furnace slag. Unfortunately, it still has some steel left in it, and that's what causes the flat tires. The rest of the slag is what's toxic.
Thank you. But moving on, as mentioned before, and according to Discover Muscatine, some of the 3 most important issues facing Muscatine, you said, were COVID-19, mental health, and economic stability. Why, and is there more?
Well, first off, COVID. We don't know what the impact's going to be. It's now picking up again. We're hitting the winter months. We're talking about even more cases. We're talking about people not having jobs or being able to go to work. So all of a sudden, they don't have the money to pay their property taxes. On top of it, they have not passed the economic relief package in the U.S. Senate and House, and President Trump has not signed it. So all of that extra money that would have gone to the states to backfill in what they've lost due to COVID may not come. And if it doesn't come, guess what happens? The state holds on to that money they've already received. They'll use it for state oversight. And what should be sent back to the counties may not be sent back. Now, we saw this in Illinois when they didn't pass a budget, that the counties, the schools, and everything else, the smaller government agencies, even though they may have had a budget, if you don't have any money to put in the bank, who cares what the budget is? So that's why COVID is so important. Now, the other item is mental health. We have more requirements unfunded by the state that the mental health region has to meet. Now, the problem I have is the supervisors, specifically Mr. Mather, made accusations about the mental health region and basically against the other counties that they were financially mismanaging. And because of that, they got kicked out. And the state forced the other 4 counties to take Muscatine back. So we have a whole problem of building trust again. So just to provide the services that we have to provide, do we have the money to do it? And we need to work with the other counties, and we need to have cooperation, and they need to trust us. The last one is economic development. Now, we don't have an economic committee with the Board of Supervisors. To me, if we're going to work with the municipalities in this county, we need to have a committee set up with representatives from the major and minor cities in the county, towns, from the Board of Supervisors, and from the business and financial community to bring jobs into this county with better pay. So number one, the people in the county see more economic growth, and it goes basically at home at night, goes into their bank. They take the check home, the paycheck. But on top of it, we bring more people, or the sons and daughters of the people of this county, residents of this county, have jobs to stay here, so we grow the population in the school system. So the whole idea is to grow the county, I won't say organically, but realizing that we have to have good paying jobs and we have to have a future.
And going off what you said on municipalities, that leads into our next question here. Do you believe that Muscatine County should improve its business reputation with other municipalities? And if so, what steps should the county take?
Well, first thing is develop that committee that has some teeth in it. So let's say the town of West Liberty, they need more homes over there. So the people living there, working at the factories there, working at the businesses there, have a nice home to live in, all right? Or multiple family dwellings, or better control of the mobile home parks. We need to work with the cities on that. That's why we have to have that economic committee that has some teeth, that works with the different cities. The other thing is we need to work with the other counties. We have adjacent counties, Cedar County, which we upset a lot over the mental health. We have Louisa County. We could work with those counties and do some joint purchasing. So let's say I want to improve the gravel roads, add more gravel to it, build it back up. So if we have 2 or 3 counties buying gravel from Wendling quarries at the same time, we get a better price break. So let's look at combining some of the basically we're not giving up any of our sovereign county control, but basically we're going to do our purchasing together. We're going to work together to improve the whole economic environment of a 2 or 3 county region.
And quick follow-up, why do you think we haven't made this committee that you want to create?
Work? It's hard work. I mean, this is the thing. Being a supervisor, you're going to get paid around what? $30,000 a year. That's a good job. That's a 40-hour-a-week job. If you're going to be a supervisor, then just showing up for a couple of hours on Monday, except when you're doing budget, and going to a couple of committee meetings once a month, is that really work? We need to tell the supervisors, you need to be working on these things. It's hard work. And that's the reason why I believe I'm going to be a good supervisor is I'm not afraid of the work.
Well, moving on here. Tell me about the importance of infrastructure projects that should occur here in Muscatine County.
In the county, we have both concrete paved roads or asphalt paved roads. I don't know if we have very many of those left. I think they're mostly concrete now. We also have gravel roads. And we have bridges and we have culverts that go underneath them. The culverts are collapsing because of the weight on them. They weren't designed for the heavier traffic on them. The gravel roads are way out of control in basically maintenance. They go over and they put an inch of gravel, inch and a half of gravel on it, and they call that good. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, you should have a 6-inch base of gravel plus another 3 inches on top of it, minimum, if you're going to have a well-maintained gravel road. I can go out right now on gravel roads close to me, take a shovel and get maybe an inch of gravel. These roads have been, and the culverts and the bridges have been ignored for 12 years and longer. It's not going to be something that can be fixed right away infrastructure-wise. Now, let's take another thing that impacts the county, the southern half of the county, the Louisa lift station. Last year, it almost quit during the flood season. It would have flooded the lower half of the county. A lot of people living there, businesses and such. Well, the Louisa lift station is part of a drainage district. We need to work with that drainage district to make sure that pump station, electric pump station, has the money and it is a good repair and it has the spare parts. It's not being done. So those are things infrastructure-wise we need to address. But COVID's going to come first. We've got to have the money. And then we have to realize that it's not a 1-year fix. It's not a 2-year fix. It's a 4, an 8, and I'll keep putting hands up here, 12-year fix. This is something that is going to have to go across election cycles, and we're going to have to work on both sides of the aisle, if you want to put it that way, or we need to get supervisors in that are willing to do the work.
And so many people in office and people running for office tend to say, I want to fix the roads, I want to fix the roads, that's what we're going to do. Why are you any different?
Well, first off, I've been out preaching this for 3+ years. With slag. So I've addressed slag use, saying, look, we don't want slag on the road. I've gone and I've done presentations on that. I'll be honest. I'm sitting here saying I'm going to do this. I'm the person for it. That's about the best I can say until I go out and I do it. But I'll tell people also, it's not something that can be done in 1 or 2 years, and we're going to have to figure out where we're going to get the money to do it. But the other thing we need to do is this. We need to go out and talk to the people living out in the county. It's remarkable the number of people come up to me, Republican, Democrat, Independent, pointing out all the places the road's falling apart. And then they say, we call the engineering department, we talk to the head engineer, and that stops right there. And that's something else, is to get people more involved in the government. We need a way of having a complaint getting to the correct person and then having that person held accountable by the Board of Supervisors.
So on that topic of people and including them, that actually segues into our next question here, which is, if elected, what steps will you take to diversify the Muscatine County workforce, boards, and commissions to reflect the needs and diversity of the county?
Well, that's a good question. I went out and I looked at, first let's talk about staff, workforce. I went out and I looked at the online job applications for the county. They don't talk anything about civil rights or equal opportunity. Nothing at all. They're very poorly written. There are no skill tests to show whether you got the correct person for the job. Well, the first thing I would do is I'd go back and say, what does the Iowa Civil Rights Commission say we should do on hiring? What does equal opportunity say we're supposed to do? And I would make sure that we have a publicly available job description book, an employee handbook, so anybody applying for the job knows exactly what needs to be done. Now, how do we get people, and again, for the workforce, how do we get people in the workforce that are new to it? We can turn around and we can have internships for people in high school and in community college. And those internships give people a chance to see, do I really want to have this job? Do I really want to do this? Right? So it gives them some goals. So it's going to be a process in which you identify your weak areas using state and federal guidelines, and then you start to say, how do I fix that? We're not doing that. There is just like haphazard. I'm going to go hire somebody. Here's a job application. You don't know who's going to apply for the job. How do you find out whether you were met 90% of the requirements for the job and someone at 100% got the job? How do you know that? There is no way. Now, as for the boards and the commissions and such, that's even more interesting. There is no manual out there saying, what does that board do? What are the minimum requirements to be a member of that board? There's nothing saying that. Also, when they apply or they try to advertise the position, trying to get somebody to apply for that, it goes in the public notice section of the 3 papers. People don't look in the public notice section. You've got to advertise that job. Nor does it go out to any type of online job application web page. It's on the county web page, but they don't actively go out and try to get people to come to the county. Now, I will tell you, most job applications I've seen since the 1980s forward specifically say, we encourage women, minorities, to apply for positions here. It's a welcoming statement. I don't see that. Those are things that can be changed right away, coming in and cost no money to do. Then what do? You turn around and you start looking at your hiring policy this year, next year, the year afterwards. Your retention policy. Did you hire somebody? Did they feel comfortable enough to stay on? Those are things that you can do that, again, don't cost any money, but we're not doing that.
Now, thank you for that. And moving on, so this is going to be our last question here before we go into closing statements, okay?
Okay.
So the last question here is, because many immigrants and Latinos fear contact with government officials, what will you do to increase their access to your office and ensure their voices are heard while protecting their anonymity and those who are undocumented? And briefly.
Well, that's interesting. LULAC has a helpline, and there's a phone number for it. It's a 515 phone number, but there is a phone number for it. Have we gotten a hold of it? Has our county actually gotten a hold of that helpline saying, oh, by the way, here's the people to talk to for this, and this. Here's the phone numbers. Here's their name. I've heard this complaint from everybody is they don't know who to talk to in the county if they have a complaint. So that's number one. Start with the available helplines and make sure that it's an open access to the correct people in our county government. Number two, and this is something I'm bringing from ISO, International Standards, is a complaint system. Now, for a laboratory, if I audited a laboratory for ISO 17025, you have to have a complaint system. Who got the complaint, who addressed the complaint, and how did you resolve the complaint? We don't have that. It doesn't cost any money. We just basically describe what needs to be done, provide the access either by mail, text, email, or phone call, and that complaint goes to the correct person in the government. Now, when someone answers the phone, all right, we're not bilingual yet, or trilingual, because again, we have people from Africa working in and living in the county. But the thing is, at least in English, you can take the complaint. You're not asking the person, what is your legal status? You're just taking the complaint. If they want to give somebody that you're supposed to contact, that's great. We're not following up on that. What we want is we want people to understand, no matter who you are, if you reside in this county and you have a complaint or need access, this is the way you do it. Now, the last thing is more general. It's a softer approach, but once a month, I would like to take, and this if I get the other candidate in that I'm supporting, we would like to take the Board of Supervisors meeting once a month, have it at night, and have it in West Liberty or in Wilton. Rotate it around, so Muscatine, West Liberty, Wilton. So once every 3 months, this Board of Supervisors will meet at night in your local community, either at the West Liberty Community Center or the Wilton Community Center or at MCC here, because great parking, a lot of ADA compliant parking. So, and you can have large crowds and have people come in and talk to the supervisors, have a supervisors meeting, and if there's anything that's key that we need public input in, that's the supervisors meeting that you have that on your agenda. So that would be the third thing I would do.
Well, thank you. So thank you very much for being
you.
here, and that is our time. But I would like to give you 2 minutes here just to give your final spiel.
Well, first off, thank you very much for having me. And I want to thank everybody who's sitting around and listening to me. Please vote for me. The other person that I'm supporting, and I'm just throwing this in at the end because this person will work with me on the Board of Supervisors. It's the write-in candidate, Cass Kelly, for District 4. I'll spell her name, K-A-S, first name, last name, K-E-L-L-Y, and you need to write her in for District 4 supervisors. I've worked with Cass. Cass believes in opening up the government and making us accountable to the people. Plus, we are fiduciarily responsible. That means we're not going to be spending things like, like we have all the money in the world. We're going to use our money effectively, and we're going to make life better for the residents of this county. Now, again, that may sound like a whole bunch of hot air, but I believe in working hard, and I also believe in telling the truth.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not forget to vote November 3rd. Please be aware that you can vote early. And please tune in to our next interview here with Mary Mason Wheeler, running for the County Auditor. Thank you, and good night. Hello, and welcome to the 2020 LULAC Muscatine Political Forum. My name is Daniel Salazar, and I will be your host for this evening. LULAC stands for League of United Latin American Citizens and is one of the oldest civil rights organizations in this country. The mission of LULAC is to advance the economic condition, educational attainment, political influence, housing, health, and civil rights of the Hispanic population of the United States. Tonight, we are joined by independent candidate Mary Mason Wheeler. For Ms. Wheeler, serving at the election as a precinct official was a great opportunity to become more involved in her local community. Her top 3 issues include communication, community participation, and voter registration. Before we begin, I would like to thank the Muscatine Community College and the students behind the scenes who are using this as a learning opportunity. They are the students helping making this happen for all of you at home. And as a reminder, LULAC is a nonpartisan organization. And we would like to point out that we did have limited time slots, and Ms. Wheeler just happened to be the first one to respond. And on that note, let's get started. Mary, if I may, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here.
Of course. So, welcome, and especially for coming under these unique circumstances. So before we get into some of these other questions here, I'd like you to tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get to this point in your life?
Well, I first started volunteering and working as a precinct official when I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. It was a great opportunity for me to get out of the house for an afternoon or a full day, to be involved in the election process, to be able to kind of be face-to-face with people in the community. I grew up in a family that voting was a high priority. You never missed an election. It was just something that was expected of you. So then when I became an adult, that I carried on that same mentality, and I noticed that the people that worked at my local precinct, they were kind of elderly, all of them were, and that was before the computers were introduced and everything like that. And I decided that maybe I could spend a day with these ladies and learn from them. And as I started to do that, I worked for 2 years as a precinct official, and then I, after that, became a precinct captain, and that was about the time that the computer system came into place. And sadly, a lot of the great committed volunteers, we lost them around that time. The computers are a little bit daunting for some people that aren't familiar with them. But it was a great opportunity to be involved with the election process, kind of see what was behind the scenes. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed working with the staff at the county auditor's office. And as I transitioned from being a full-time stay-at-home mom to graduating from MCC and going into my professional world, it was always in the back of my mind that I would really like to be more involved with the auditor's office and be more involved in the day-to-day operations, not just the election process. But Leslie has been the auditor since '98, so she does a fabulous job, and there's no way that anybody was ever going to run against her. So then when I found out that she was retiring, this looked like a great opportunity to throw my hat in the ring and see what would happen.
And just a quick follow-up, what do you say to those young people kind of sort of like you who are thinking about being involved?
Do it. It's a great way. It's a commitment of, there's typically 1 to 2 training sessions beforehand. They're an hour or an hour and a half each. And then you have a full day commitment. It's a really long day. It's like 6 or 7 a.m. Typically, the precinct officials are there an hour before the polls open, and then however long it takes to close everything down afterwards. It's a really, really long day, but it's a really enriching day, and it's a great way to see your community, see who's involved. I happen to be assigned to work in the precinct that I also live in. So it's been really exciting for me to, one thing that I talk about that I really enjoy is the first-time voters when they come in. A lot of times they're kids that my kids have grown up with, and then I get to help them through their first-time voting process, and that's really kind of exciting. I got to help my son when he was a first-time voter and make sure he was registered and explain the ballot process to him, and that's one of my favorite things to do.
And where might someone go to sign up to be in one of those?
You can contact the auditor's office, and you can also contact the Secretary of State's office, and they'll just direct you basically to your local auditor's office. A lot of people don't know either. It's a paid position. It's a volunteer position, but you do receive some compensation by the end of for your time there, and that played into why I started, because the elections are always obviously in November, and you get that check in the mail a little bit right before Christmas, which kind of helps out a little bit. So it's not a whole lot, but it's a little bit, and it just kind of makes your day a little bit more worthwhile.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So moving on.
Mm-hmm.
No party. Independent.
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, I personally don't think that county and city offices should be partisan. Our city councils are run as a nonpartisan race in theory. Our school boards are run as a nonpartisan race. I don't believe that the national platforms hold that much relevance when it comes to county level decisions. And especially for the office of the auditor, where one of the main roles of the auditor is oversight of the election, making sure that everything is fair, everything is non-biased, everything is above board. I don't think that necessarily having a party affiliation is necessary for that capacity.
And did you always think this, or it kind of started when it was...
Interestingly enough, in order to work at the polls, you do have to be registered as one party or the other. And that is because the polls are balanced. Each precinct is balanced, and so there's the equal number of each party. So there's a process that happens in the morning time where when each precinct worker is sworn in, and there are two, one from the Democratic Party and one from the Republican Party, who each volunteer, and their name is offered up. Say if you are a voter that needs assistance and can't get out of your car, or you are a voter who needs assistance casting your ballot, these two people, one from each party, will go and offer assistance, and they do it together in tandem to ensure the non-biased nature of this, that neither person is saying vote this way or vote that way, which our precinct workers in this county wouldn't do anyway. But you do have to hold a party affiliation to be a precinct worker, but I don't know that that necessarily carries through to be the person that oversees all of that, if that makes sense.
No, according to your website, you write, and I quote, "I am running without the financial backing
Yes.
of either major party as a
Yes.
grassroots campaign, and is up to individuals, friends, family, and community members help spread the word." End of quote. How has that been for you, not having that?
It's interesting. I have friends that are running for other offices. I'm on good terms with everybody, even the other women who are running for this office. We're all on good terms. I have nothing negative to say about any of them. They're both wonderful women and would be, no matter who Muscatine County votes for county auditor, they're going to be in good hands. That's all there is to it. But it's been interesting because there are some things that I'm just, also with it being in the pandemic, it's a very interesting time to be running a campaign, but I'm not, I haven't sent out any mailers. I haven't sent out, the remember to vote type things. A lot of our promotions have been on social media. We're utilizing a lot of social media. It's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of face-to-face with people and things like that, instead of the traditional
Right.
way of campaigning.
No yard signs?
Huh?
No yard signs or anything?
We do have yard signs.
Okay.
We just don't have as many as some other people. But we do have yard signs, and if anybody wants one, they can let me know. I do have a handful left that we can put out. So, yeah.
So moving on here, as I stated earlier, you once said that your top 3 issues include communication,
Yep.
community participation, and voter registration. Why?
I'm studying for a double BA right now, but I'm a communications major, and communications is really important to me. I am a huge advocate of letting people have all of the facts and allowing them to make a decision. I think that's the way that most people would prefer things. I don't want people to give me a portion of the information. I want to have all of it, and then I can make the appropriate decision. I think that the auditor's office has several layers of responsibilities, and I would really like to see, if I was elected into that position, I would really like to partner with local media and with organizations like LULAC and with the League of Women Voters to help let people know what the office does. Let people know on a regular basis, not just during the election season, but the auditor's office has other work that they do all year long, and I think it would be really beneficial to help the community know what is happening in the auditor's office. The auditor operates as the clerk for the Board of Supervisors, and they're responsible for publishing the minutes of each meeting. And that's something that you might know that they do, but where do you find those minutes, and how are they accessible, and that type of thing. And I would really like to help promote that, so that the average citizen, you shouldn't have to have a research degree to be able to go find what your local government is doing.
And kind of briefly going off of what you just said, what kind of things does the auditor do? Many people only think of them and associate them with voting, and you just
They oversee obviously they oversee the elections, which is not just one day. It is a year-round process, especially in an election year. But even in a non-presidential year, there are local elections, school board elections, and special elections that happen all year long. So those things are always brewing. They also oversee, like I said, they operate as the clerk for the County Board of Supervisors. The auditor's office also oversees payroll for the county, and they also operate and oversee some liquor licenses for bars that are outside of city limits, and a couple other things along the way too that are just kind of keeping county government going.
Thank you. So moving on here, and I believe you kind of sort of answered a bit of this, but what steps will you take to increase voter turnout here in Muscatine County?
I would love to work with the area high schools, Muscatine High School, Wilton, and L&M, and even West Liberty, and work with them with their juniors and seniors, helping them understand the election process, helping them understand how to vote. I think that a lot of times we get so stuck on the voter registration number and making sure that those kids are registered to vote, but we don't explain to them how. We don't explain to them what the precincts are, how to find out what precinct they're in, how to find out if you have a local election, which ward you're in, and how do you know which people to research for that area. When you go to cast your vote, what the process is. You have to sign in with your ID, you're gonna get your ballot, you're gonna do this and this. This is the machine that you're gonna enter it into. All of these types of steps that are along the way that can be a little bit intimidating if you're not familiar with it.
So moving on here, if elected, would you commit to publishing vote forms in both English and Spanish to increase community accessibility and communication?
I was really excited when I saw that question come through my email. Yes, absolutely. I think that every form that can be published in both languages should. I think that it is a disservice to a large percentage of our community to not have that. And not only that, but I was thinking about that this morning, and I was thinking about how, more than that, I think we should also really make a concerted effort to put the steps in place to have bilingual workers at all of our precincts. I would definitely want to start with having bilingual workers at the early elections, like the voting that you can do right now. There should definitely be somebody there that can communicate with people who aren't native English speakers. And then I would work on, after having that in place, I would work on the precincts and the wards that have a higher demographic of Hispanic population. I would definitely try and recruit many more bilingual people to work in those places. And eventually the goal would be to have them in every precinct, because it's really a disservice to a large contingency to not have that. I don't know why somebody would say no to that.
Thank you. So still somewhat on topic of diversity and so on. So LULAC Iowa has been involved in several voter suppression lawsuits against the state of Iowa over the last few years. So do you believe that voter suppression exists? And if you do, what do you say to those?
I do, but I think it's different than people think, because we think voter suppression like someone like strong arming you and saying you can't vote. But I think that what it looks more like is the case that we saw in Memphis last week, where a precinct worker was turning away potential voters because of T-shirts that they had. And that's a form of voter suppression, because there's no regulation on what the voter can wear. There are regulations on what the precinct worker can wear, but not the voter. And I think that it looks more like In Iowa, we have same-day registration and we have same-day address change. So if you moved precincts, you can go to your current precinct in Iowa and they can update your address right there and allow you to vote. But I think voter suppression would look, in Iowa, might look more like you haven't updated your address, so you can't vote in this precinct, but you can. You can just update, there's a process to update your address right there. There's a process to register right there. If you don't have your ID, there is a process in place to have a verified person vouch for you. These are all processes that are in place that might not be acknowledged or enforced the way that they should be.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this kind of goes back to your issue of communication.
Absolutely. You have to educate not only the precinct workers, but you have to educate the community members, because if you don't know that you have same-day registration, if you watch the news, then other states have a deadline to register by. And if you don't register by this date, you can't vote. And if you don't know that Iowa has same-day registration, then you think, oh, I missed it. But you can go, you can take your ID, take your verification of your address, show up at your precinct and register that day. And if you're at the wrong precinct, in our county, they will print off a sticker that'll tell you what precinct to go to. And you can go there and you can register there that day.
Well, thank you. And so
People don't know that.
I like how excited you are.
It's a
No,
big
really.
deal that people don't know that. It's really frustrating. If you, like, the auditor's office is open now. You can go vote now. And if you aren't registered, you can register. And if you turn 18 on or before Election Day, you can go vote. You don't have to be registered in October or what, like, you can do it. And people don't know that.
So last question here.
Sorry.
No, it's great. I love it. Last question here. What would be your approach to strengthening or improving the working relationship between the auditor's office and other county officials and staff?
I think a lot of it comes down to that communication again. What can we do for you? What are you not getting from us? Where are we falling short? The auditor's office has, the current auditor has built an amazing staff. And that's one of the great things about the position, is that the staff stays in place. So it's not a position that you walk into and you are expected to know everything on day one. The state Secretary of State's office also hosts an auditor school for newly elected auditors to go and receive training in the various capacities of the job. And then you would work with the current staff, and then you would, increase that communication with other members of the county and say, what can we do for you? What are you not getting? And all of that type of thing.
And so, I lied. I have one more actually that just came to mind.
Okay.
Do you think that the auditor's office is underrated?
I think that there's a lot that goes on that people don't know about. I think that there are a lot of irons in the fire, and the auditor itself, the position of auditor should be hands-on and like knowing how to do each one of those tasks, but also trusting the staff that is in place and that has been trained, and they're incredibly competent to do the task also. And I see the role of the auditor as the administrative, the manager, like the figurehead of the office, the public face of the office, but that is not at all discrediting the work that the staff also does. And I think that I think that the auditor should be hands-on and know how to do those. I don't think that maybe not on day one, but I don't think that they should be like, I don't do that, so-and-so does that. They should know how to do everything in the office, but it's not one person runs the whole office. There is a full staff that has been there for several years and they are a great team to work with, and I've worked with them through the election process, and I would really enjoy being able to work with them on a daily basis.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here and talking with you today. And I'd like to give you just a couple minutes to just
Yeah.
give your closing statement there.
I think that, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate this. Like I said, I'm a little bit nerdy about the election process. I really enjoy elections and politics. I don't think that national stage politics play into the local level. I don't think that they are as relevant as we need them to be. And I think that people don't recognize how much the local elections shape your life. Your school board elections, your city council elections, your county positions, those shape our day-to-day life in a much stronger way than people give them credit for. And I think that we need to increase voter awareness for each of those roles and capacities. And I would really love the opportunity to work with organizations like LULAC and the League of Women Voters and the various media sources around town to increase education and awareness about the election process, what the auditor's office does as a whole, how to become involved, because there's so much to become involved with, like how do you file your paperwork, how do you get your name on a ballot, how do you find out who your local party officials are, and how do you, if you want to go door to door, how do you get involved in that process? And there's a lot that goes on that people aren't aware of. And I think that the auditor's office is a great starting point for all of those to be able to help direct people to the information that they need.
Well, thank you, Mary Wason-Wheeler. I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming here, and it was a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck.
Thank you.
And to all you at home, ladies and gentlemen, again, do not forget to vote November 3rd. And
Or now.
with early voting, and as she was telling you now, there is same-day registration. So if it's your birthday, right on that day, you can still do it.
Absolutely.
Please tune in into our next interview here with Nathan Mather. He's running for the Muscatine Board of Supervisors District 4. Thank you, and good night.